Hey everybody, welcome back to Terrificon. This is Carrie Sanders of Splash Pages, and we are here with the fabulous creator Stuart Sager.
Hi everybody, thanks for having me.
Oh, so bringing up right away what I wanted to go into, the first thing that I found of yours was Shiver in the Dark, and it is such a dark, twisted sort of ambiance with it. I love it. I'm the horror
You're
one
not
of the
saying
group.
anything bad about me, I hope.
No. They all know me. I'm the one who's
Good.
just like, okay, horror update now. So, what inspired you for this deep deliciousness of darkness?
So it's the first comic that I ever made. It's when I wrote, drew, lettered, colored, published. I knew I wanted to make a comic book. I had a background in comics. I'd worked in a comic shop since I was 13. My parents were antique dealers who specialized in lighting and lamps.
Okay.
And I really, when I was young and I went to a lot of estate sales and antique shows and things like that, I was always able to buy old comics for less than new comics. So the guys I'm really inspired by from my age aren't the guys that I'm supposed to like. All my friends like Byrne, Miller, and Perez, and I was always Wrightson and Adams and Kaluta.
Right.
So I have that sort of darker, grittier 70s horror, Esteban Morato kind of feel. And when it came time to make a comic book, I had several ideas of things I wanted to do. I kind of thought it'd be fun to do a horror comic, but I also kind of wanted to do a romance comic.
Yeah.
And I can only do one, so I thought take my favorite elements of the two and mash it together, which kind of turns you into Gothic.
Yeah.
That's how I get there.
Gothic is lovely, and I don't know. I love that it was surrounds a book, and this girl who's just like, doesn't need the book. There's no reason for her to have this
Nope.
book, but just because she can't have it, she wants this goddamn book, and that ruins her life.
Well, so here's the thing. There were a lot of movies and a lot of stories about forces of evil and the sweet, innocent victim. And I thought, I don't want someone who's sweet and innocent. I said, I want the story of somebody who has life come to them more easily. Life isn't always fair. In fact, it often isn't. We don't all have the same opportunities. And I said, let's tell the story about somebody who actually has better opportunities but makes very bad choices. That story is never told, so that's what I wanted to do.
And that way you can get caught up in the horror and everything of it, and not feel so bad for the person that everything's going wrong.
Well, and she's also more capable to deal with. She's kind of a rotten person herself, so when she's surrounded by bad people, she can recognize it, knows how to handle it.
Yeah.
The gap wasn't as big. Let's bring them together.
Okay, and then we got out a special piece of art here, folks.
Oh, sure. This
I've
guy?
been talking about, yeah. So he not only does the writing and the coloring and the inking and everything, but we've been talking beforehand about in books that he draws and doesn't do the inking on, or doesn't do the coloring on, my goodness. He's very good at getting the black and whites ready and the inks and stuff.
Yeah.
For the same style of like the watercolor washes that take place, because you do the coloring, but it's a lot of people I don't think can carry over for having the ink in the back for so much of the color ready for somebody else to know exactly where it needs to be.
My thing is, well, if you do it all, then you're in complete control of it.
Yeah.
But what I think I started doing was I really cut my teeth in drawing in black and white. Shiver in the Dark was black and white for the first 3 issues. I really developed my sense of lighting through working in high contrast black and white. And you know what? I like a lot of old movies. I like a lot of noir. I still watch a lot of black and white television. And they shoot things and film things differently if you can just work in black and white. Nowadays, if I approach something, if I know I'm going to color it, I'll actually draw it a little bit differently. But in general, if you can solve all your lighting problems at just the black and white stage, the coloring is a lot easier.
Yeah.
I've talked to a couple artists who have said, and I realized I was doing the same thing myself, sometimes you draw something and ink it in a way to sort of take away the opportunity of letting the colorist decide where the light source is. You've already built it in. Nowadays, a lot of comics are computer colored, and a lot of great lighting effects are done via the computer.
Yeah.
So more and more comic book artists are drawing in lines, but without deep blacks anymore. Well, I already told you the artists that I liked growing up. Those guys know how to use a lot of black. I remember my first portfolio review I ever got was from Bob Schreck, who was just before he was given the Batman book to edit.
Okay.
And he to ask me, where'd you go to school? How did you get here? Tell me about your art style. And I basically told him I'm self-taught, but when I rattled off the artists I liked, he kind of nodded his head and he said, okay, I get it. It totally makes sense. He was surprised because he was looking at my work and he said, your influences are older than you are. And I was sort of an anomaly like that. But to that extent, here's what that means. I came into comics at just this right time where I had learned a lot of the old techniques and was inspired by a lot of guys who were really much earlier than I was supposed to be, but I was young enough that I was still able to learn Photoshop and learn all the digital stuff.
Oh yeah,
So-
that was the crucial crossover right there.
Well, move forward or back just a few years, and I'm a very different artist. I was able to really learn how to do the conventional stuff, and I'm not lost in digital, thank goodness.
Awesome. So let's talk real quick about the Wise Old Owl.
The Wise Old Owl.
This is what you have going on that you were going to tell me about it.
So Wise Old Owl is this crazy idea. I had this idea for this character back in college, and it was missing a piece, and I wasn't quite sure how to have the story work. I was asked to be a part of a 24-hour, a one-day comic book in a day challenge held at Noblesville Creates.
Okay.
I often help them with their comic book in a day challenge, and the one little missing piece of the story popped into my head, and I thought, I got to use that old character from college. So it's kind of a send-up of old classic superheroes from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and somewhat into the 70s.
Okay.
But my hero is really not that heroic. Kind of similar to Grace from Shiver in the Dark in that he is operating from a position of comfort and power and some money. Now, when you're somebody who saves the world regularly and there's no one to check you, you can start to decide what becomes fair and unfair.
Oh yeah.
Are the spoils yours or not? So what I love is in my character, what he does is when he fights crime, maybe he'll have a villain who will do something horrible, like maybe they'll come up with a freeze ray, and it'll freeze the river.
Yeah.
Well, he stops that guy, sends him to jail, but he still has the freeze ray, and he says this thing's a marvel. He takes it apart, figures out how it works, copyrights it.
Oh.
Right, takes it for himself and releases like a new refrigerator. That guy's in jail. He doesn't get anything from it. And anybody says, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not very fair. His response is, what are you talking about? I just saved my neck. I saved the whole world. I'm making a greater refrigerator that all mankind benefits from. Yeah, but. So he's fairly fascist. And there are parts in here where it's campy as well. There's a character in here that's sort of like a 1970s sort of House of Secrets Warren type character. I've got such a background in comics, I wanted to hit all these different notes. So the Wise
Right.
Old Owl has a lot of that in here.
Okay. And you're working on Conan now, you said.
Yeah, I am. So I've got I think there's a cover that comes out this week. And I've got a cover for the new #1 that are coming out for a new series in September. And then I was just in San Diego, and I just talked to the editor, so I'm going to be working on Savage Sword of Conan too. So they're great. I did not grow up a Conan guy necessarily, but I talked about how much I like drawing smoke and wood and nature and the spooky stuff. It lends itself to Conan so well. I'm having a blast.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got to get wrapped up. We don't want to take up all of your time, and there are people starting to line up around here.
I see them.
Yep. So anyway, thank you very much for this.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
And
Thanks for tuning in, you guys.
yep, we'll see you later.